leader at Bruce County in economic development. Welcome to Business to Bruce's What's in a Window with the Retail Duo. Bruce County, we run a small business enterprise center with funding to provide support and one-on-one consultations, training, and information sharing. And we do have a newsletter, so I will be sending that information in the follow-up email to inform you of other programs and supports. And there is also a handout that Diane and Karen shared as well. So I will pass it along to them to get the session started.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We will just share our screen. So just bear with us for a moment. And then Lindsay, if you don't mind just making sure that we're good. Let's see here. Can we see
you're sharing us, so just the
Okay.
other slide.
Yes, okay, we'll go down. We good yet?
Not yet. We're still just seeing
Okay.
seeing us.
Okay, let's try it one more time here. We'll do this once more. Okay. No, still us?
Still just sharing us. I think you would, I
Okay.
don't know what you clicked the last time.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. We're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go into full mode here. We'll just get a full screen and I'm just going to check that we can you see them moving?
Yep. That's
okay, perfect.
Amazing.
So here we are. I'm Karen and this
Don't
is
worry,
Diane.
I'll cut that out.
Okay.
I'll cut it out.
Perfect. Yes.
It'll look like
Make
it
us
went so
look
smooth.
super polished.
So polished.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
well, welcome. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for the warm welcome. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules. Our session, we hope that it will be very useful, and we're going to focus on, of course, transforming your storefronts to create maximum impact, and of course, focusing on a window and how to get people into your shops.
Yes. So we're the Retail Duo. We are retail problem solvers. We're also previously by trade professors at Sheridan College in visual merchandising and interior decorating. Karen also supports their field placement. So if you ever need a student, you know who to contact. But what we do is we're consulting kind of like a retail concierge. So we mainly focus on these 4 pillars. We won't spend a ton of time on them, but I tend to come from a background of marketing and graphics and styling, so mainly fashion styling. So those are sort of my trade tricks, I guess, or specialties. Yeah. And Karen?
Well, my background is more home fashions and the retail side, the merchandising side. So together, we always say that we complement each other. We offer 2 perspectives. So we kind of dive into these little buckets as well as doing a little bit of training. We've worked with some smaller brands and go into stores and help train the coworkers there on everything from display to customer service and just kind of talking about their brands. So our objectives for tonight, I guess this is the teachers in us with our learning goals, but really just looking at the basics of effective merchandising. And again, you probably already know this. It's just taking that time to, kind of take a step back and maybe think about things that you've kind of put on the back burner for a while. And of course, just looking at that curb appeal. So making things a little bit more, of course, exciting and eye-catching. And we also know there are kind of guidelines and standards.
Karen always has this great saying, it's called parking lot to parking lot, right? Really thinking about what the customer or guest experience is from parking lot into your space and then going back into where they've parked. So it's like the whole journey is part of what we consider as retail consultants. What are all the touch points that we connect with customers? And speaking of connecting, we have a great friend of ours is Ron Thurston. He is an amazing author. He has a podcast. And his book's called Retail Pride. I believe that's what his podcast is called as well. Super great. I highly recommend it. But he was highly promoting his book during the pandemic. And at the pandemic level, it was obviously a really tough time that kind of shifted retail. But he had this quote, "Retail is the forum that's reconnecting the world." And I think that was super important when we were really focusing on local businesses and shopping there, almost out of requirement, but now like a necessity, but now it's sort of transformed the communities involved. And that's when Karen and I started our business, because we saw the need for retailers, small retailers, entrepreneurs. They needed help, and it was sort of like we can provide that help to them. But it is really about creating that community and reconnecting with people.
We love this image. It kind of shows that in real life at Stacked Market in Toronto. It's all of those containers made up into small stores. Some are pop-ups, but just that feeling that people can spend a couple hours or the whole day there, and you're just connecting with that community. So another one of our kind of catchphrases that I don't even know who said this, but we have totally borrowed it. That it's kind of that whole idea that company is coming. So when you have, your shop, you're opening for the day, at any given time, it could be someone's first experience with your brand. And I think that's really important to remember, because it's that first impression. Someone might just be especially passing through on a vacation and wandering, but are you always at your best? So it's much like, when we're hosting a dinner party at our house, we do that clean sweep, and we try to make sure our house is magazine ready. But it's really true. It's about, not just you, but passing that on to all of your coworkers.
I know I do the extra scour clean when my mother-in-law's coming over. It's required. So I always put that into the brain when I'm thinking about opening a store or starting up a storefront, really thinking about those customers as guests as opposed to just customers, right?
And again, they might not make a purchase, but they'll have that memory of how they were treated and what they saw.
So the basic 5 senses are the fundamentals of merchandising. In our opinion, we always want to tap into the senses. So how are we appealing to the senses, again, from parking lot to parking lot? So really thinking about the sight, sounds, touch, smell, even taste. A lot of more experiential environments are trending within retail spaces, big and small brands. So ask yourself, what are you doing to motivate people to take the extra step into your space? Maybe you're capturing them with a smell. It could be a seasonal thing, capturing them with a seating area, whatever it might be. So this is a great example. We were walking along Fifth Avenue in New York City, and Nest, which is a scent company, they provide scents, diffusers and fragrances. They had these stations up Fifth Avenue, and they were pumping out the smell, and you could smell cinnamon and all these sort of Christmas holiday smells. And it literally stopped us.
Like pine. It was just so magical.
And it was not included into a store. It was just creating that talk and discussion around the brand, like giving brand exposure. So we love that the sensory smell is one of the 5 senses that I think we kind of overlook.
And then again, here's our phrase, parking lot to parking lot, just that whole journey. What are people experiencing? And that, of course, when you're working in a community, goes through that whole downtown or the other stores in your area, working together to, again, what you're trying to accomplish here. And with Spruce to Bruce, just that idea of like cohesiveness. So how we kind of lay out our presentation is we give kind of some examples or keywords, and then what we'll do is show some visual examples. So again, we tend to move kind of quickly, but again, you're free to make little notes, or of course the recording is here for you. But one of our key points that we always love to start with is color, how you're feeling for the day. Diane's in a bright red here moment. I was a little more subtle today for my Monday, but we love our warms and our cools. That's just who the duo are. So again, color, so many things can be said about color. That could be a whole webinar.
And speaking of like facades, we're starting from the exterior, right? We always have questions about what colors should we use, what are we allowed to use. Those things are always considered, but we always like to say pick a main color that's really considering your main brand assets, your story. So whatever colors are within your branding, and if you're not sure what that is, it's a good thing to figure that out. But then we always say pick a complementary or secondary and even tertiary colors. So in this example here, we have that beautiful green, and then you have the complementary on the opposite color side of the color wheel, where we have this sort of oranges, reddy oranges. So always consider those contrasting colors, and thinking about some lighter accents to sort of create that contrast.
And of course, it's really popular to do that all over color. So you'll see a lot of examples, and it kind of reminds us of if we have a residential client and it's a bathroom or small powder room, and we say, paint the whole thing. Go with this dark color, paint the ceiling. So at first it feels a little scary. taking that risk, but it's just obviously a bigger surface and you're creating more impact if your kind of rules allow you to.
Especially those saturated colors, they have a very nostalgic vibe, especially for downtown, older downtown core areas. It would still sort of, for the most part, you'd have to check, but hit with historical requirements and things like that. Just another example of what an exterior could look like. This is very sort of hoity-toity and high-end, but you could take notes to it with all the molding, and then do the opposite. This is a very light and airy kind of nostalgic vibe, but very much more traditional. And then thinking about things like flower boxes and seating, if you're allowed to, and signage, how it can be consistent, and bringing in some accents of golds or metallics to sort of bring a fancier vibe, if that's what you're going for.
And then again, this is just all of our color examples, some very bold. We saw this trend, in smaller towns as well as in larger cities. The image on the left is a Prada store in New York, and it was just before this kind of dark hunter green was popular. They were probably about a year ahead. And so we just had this moment where we knew we had to take a picture, but we loved how the stairs, the railing, everything was just that solid color. The store in the middle, big budget, with Louis Vuitton. This was a pop-up in Chicago, and it was just fun here today, gone tomorrow. They had the budget to do that. But again, the boldness, the branding, it doesn't always work for everybody, but again, we're just kind of highlighting these trends on a macro level and how you can apply them. Signage and branding.
Signage and branding. This is sort of my background. So I'm a big lover of, again, continuing your branding and your brand story through all of the signage that you choose to utilize in your store. So on the facade aspect of things, really you want a sign that has a size and scale, and also sort of speaks to your brand story. So is there a big presence like the one in the middle with, if you have a side wall on an exterior wall that's maybe not your main entrance, still an opportunity to highlight your brand there and repeat it. Small, sort of more kind of vintage type of hanging signs. They're very popular. The one on the right, almost like you have to be looking for it to find it if you're exclusive. But those can also be missed. It depends on where you place them and the contrast and the environment around that. Love that all of these options, all very different, but have a similar kind of aesthetic that is brand focused, but also very kind of neutralized so that it doesn't stand out too much.
And then, of course, with these facades, knowing your guidelines is essential. We can't say that enough, because we can have all these big ideas, but we sometimes need to be reined in by the rules or the codes. So, of course, as best you can, a brand color, font, signature style, and of course, always you can hire a professional for that. We always say with our brand board, if it's not on the board, it doesn't happen, which is good. I sometimes stray from the fonts, but very quickly I remember this, and it's true. It's just very cohesive, and it actually makes life easier when you just have this palette of certain colors. And then, of course, budget can be a pain point, but it's almost like that kitchen reno. In the end, it will pay off. It's just, it hurts a little to look at those numbers. So again, we just have a few more photos that we've captured that have strong points for various reasons. Does it mean looking into your windows? Does it mean looking into hardware, accent colors? We really love an idea of, and we can talk about this more later, but collaborating with maybe a local greenhouse or florist. Again, you're showcasing their capabilities. They're the experts. Maybe you just say 4 times a year, can you come in? Here's my price range. Let's work together. I'll promote you. You promote me, and then I need this lovely little install, because we're we still see a lot of holiday errands out there, and poinsettias. And it's hard in March when the snow is still flying, but so important to set the tone. And now we're starting to have that hope of spring and happy and bright colors.
Yeah, and it can be more simplified, like these examples here. I mean, you're dealing with different brick surfaces. Maybe it's the trim, working with some cool wood accents, continuing those same colors, maybe in the apartments above, if that's where you're situated. Just having just little bumps of information on the windows. Again, another branding moment. It doesn't always have to be at the top. It can be in the windows displays. So nice little examples of a bit of color and plants, just bringing the customer in. Nice and clean lines.
And of course, we're into those dark colors, but also that contrast of
Mhm.
those light, bright moments.
Mm.
So seasonality.
Yeah, seasonality, we always say make those seasonal changes from the exterior. They can be easy if you just sort of put them in your calendar and again budget for them. They just add a visual interest and it's something new when you're walking down the street several times over the year. It can elevate your curb appeal, considering, like Karen said, partnering with local florists. Maybe it's a memorable moment, so it could be an Instagrammable moment where you have the exterior and it speaks sort of volumes to the seasonality. Karen found this great example with this Ralph Lauren installation. Is this New York?
Yeah, New York. This is their coffee truck, famous for they just do a little hint of brand extension. So, people aren't always ready to shop and invest in a bigger piece of clothing or an accessory, but to have a little coffee, or a lot of brands are doing this with their food. So it's an extension of the brand to make you feel part of it. But we just love how simple this is with the greens in the winter, and it converts easily to fall. And then in the summer, it's, not coffee, it's a colder beverage or iced beverages. And I mean, initially a lot of money, but the idea of it and just their propping and their branding is really well done.
And then we tend to try to sort of, again, challenge the status quo when it comes to finding things like the propping that you see here. You can do traditional if your brand's more of a traditional approach, but you can also source things that maybe aren't the gourds every fall. Karen and I always laugh. It's like, oh, it's gourd time, because it's like every window just has random gourds just thrown into it. No real reflection or purpose of the brand. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about prop selection and the importance of that too. But I love these greenery examples, whether it be faux or real, just kind of giving that extra bit of texture and visual interest on the exterior.
And again, having someone come in and do these or install them, so they could be, the one in the middle could be white florals, but then it could easily change to reds or something more dramatic in spring, like bright yellow. Just thinking of different containers and barrels, and then a chance you could stamp them or have them branded as well. But just thinking of levels as well outside.
But of course, we're not just speaking just only about facades. Our favorite element, and can be also a nuisance for some that just don't know what to do with them, are the display windows. So whether you're a fashion retailer or a hard good product retailer or services, they're still really important, even though you have these spaces. Sometimes we don't know what to do with them. And that's usually the general consensus with some of our clients. But really, what's the goal of the display window? It's to delight and entertain. It's meant to stop people in their tracks, to lift their faces up from their phones. And ultimately, you want to grab their attention and bring them into the store. So it's a great way to show new products assortments. It's a great way to tell the story of your brand, but it's really about, if you elevate these can be the talk of the town. And if you elevate them on a consistent basis, even better. So lots of different options here of what you're communicating. So it's spring into style. So it's sort of a seasonality change. You can communicate sales. You can communicate community, things that are happening in your area. Changing of seasons, really simple installations, things that can be graphics, props, very simple approaches to that.
And you better have a plan, a backup plan when you start doing this, because the common problem then becomes, I can't keep these items in stock. Everything is selling. So again, to time plan the windows in, people always ask us, how long should I keep them in? So we always say 4 to 6 weeks for your theme. But of course, it depends what's happening. Boxing Day happens every time, the same time every year.
Yes.
Followed by probably like the big spring clean out or blowout sales. So you just have to time plan it in, but maybe change your product assortment, but spring into style. For example, on the left, that could, go up now and probably stay in March, April, May, but you could change out the florals. You could change out the actual materials. So again, having that flexibility is important, but really planning that wow factor.
And then it's just starting with an idea. Karen and I constantly are creating trend boards and really just kind of looking at doing tours of different retail spaces, and we're always snapping pictures. So it could really stem from anything. It could be a color that's really trending that you've bought a lot into and you want to promote. It can be a great jumping off point. Color is always our first sort of thing. It could could be pattern.
Mhm.
It could just be a total story or theme. So our first step is always start to build a mood board. So this is an example of an inspiration mood board that we might come up with. You know, we might have gone to the dollar store and saw that they had all these pomerans for very minimal money, or we have all this extra construction paper or contact paper, and we can make our own because we're really handy with the little pen knife. But these are all examples of how you can incorporate just this idea of greenery or faux greenery or real into a display on different levels. So you could use a paper, you could use real, you could use faux, and a lot of it or just a little hint of it. I personally love the top left one with the coral background, a little bit of contrast, and off figure styling some of the products as opposed to being on mannequins, which can be limiting, and just tells a really cool story of travel.
And this is great too, because you have to realize how you become inspired and where do you shelf these ideas. So for us, we love Pinterest. We make these mood boards, but when we've gone digital, sometimes we're like, where did we put that? What file is that in? And we're scrolling, remember seeing this. So sometimes it is great to snap a few photos or, print things off, make a tactile mood board, or empower someone on your staff to do this and just have like a little trend binder or a file, a designated place, because it is hard to think on the spot. So inspiration, we know that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
So just kind of sharing a few of the windows we love and why we love them. Of course, the pinnacle, Bergdorf's in New York.
Come on, everybody
yeah,
can do
yeah,
this, right? Everybody has
It
this
only
budget.
takes a year.
It only takes a year for them to develop. While Christmas is happening, they're developing the next year's Christmas displays. This is how long it takes them. They have a huge team. But there is something to be said about how they come up with their plans and their stories and their inspiration. Of course, this was last year's. Yeah, so
a little combination.
Yeah, a little bit of combination. So they do themes. Sometimes they did Swarovski crystal collaboration, which was wild. But the whole window is you could stand there for 15 minutes and not see every detail. And there's tons of them across the street. So
the nice thing though too is they have been reusing props. So also great. Within your community, you could prop share, you could create a theme together. I think we worked with Brampton a few years ago, and they kind of created a message for all of their windows and color scheme. Anthropology, if you have time, go online and look at their YouTube videos of their fabricators making the props. It is fascinating. I myself am not really, I can DIY, but I'm not that detailed to sit there, but they pump out these props for their windows, and it's just spectacular. They've gone to be really sustainable. I think one year they used old sweaters. They were using the yarn, tearing apart the sweaters for some of their props. But again, on a budget, we might not be able to create this whole theme, but you could take inspiration from, let's say, the mushrooms, or have someone do a painting that looks like that and pull from the colors. And what we love is this would be relatively easy to change out. You have the same story, you have your mannequin placement, but you just swap out your outfits.
And sometimes if you have a bit of a budget and you have some collateral, maybe from other brands or your own, doing large imagery if you can. It's not always the fact, but you can also incorporate imagery, lifestyle imagery to tell a story, make it very simple. This is on a very large scale, but it does have quite a big visual impact. And it's something that you can, again, change the mannequins out. This one correlates to the image in the campaign to the mannequin on the right. But this is Banana Republic. Okay. So again, bigger brands, but taking inspiration from that. It could be on a smaller scale window that you do mainly image based sort of presentations.
And then, of course, there are larger scale prop houses. But again, this is a reminder to bring in the experts. If there are people that can fabricate, or we always say an art student. This was for UGG, I believe it's Visual City. They kind of had these playful shapes, but just the idea of the color. And this is kind of what we mean by, of course, not on this scale, but the idea of that wow factor. So people walk by and they say, what are they doing next? I can't wait. If this is spring, wait till the holiday. So you kind of set yourself up here to be noticed, which is great. But again, just some fun textures and colors.
Yeah, for that one, I could just see making those, those balls where you jump into a bin of balls. Like you can create a little ball pit. That's the thing. I couldn't talk about it. But yeah, you can make a little cool riser out of it, or some tennis balls. It all depends on what your product assortment is, but cool way to make a riser or prop.
The fundamentals.
Yeah, the fundamentals. So when we talk talk about the interior of the store, we're talking about the main things. The first thing we always kind of take a look at is fabulous fixtures. So thinking if your fixtures that you have in your space to house your products, are they, modular? Are they flexible? Are they something that can stand the test of time? Do they kind of match or coordinate? They don't always have to do that. Again, that's on brand essence and your kind of story, but things like thrifted furniture can always work even in the window displays as well, as far as fixturing to hold your product. But really your choices need to connect with your brand, but also in the surfaces and the materials, but they can also be simple fixtures that you can include. Some of these here that are more flexible, I love the middle one, the copper, cool fixtures, very modern and unique and interesting. And we love a set of plinths on the top right where you can kind of wrap them in different materials or paint them different colors. And they have varying heights, which is great for display.
So flexible.
And they can be positioned in many different ways. Anything with a caster on it, like the bottom left that has that little step platform, all these fixtures can sort of be mixed and matched together. And something as simple as just a hanging piece of rope and a hang bar to do a sidebar fixture instead of a really expensive, fixturing
System.
wall fixturing system that kind of most of the time, to be honest, looks pretty not
Nice,
pretty.
nice.
So
And
again,
storage.
yeah, and
We always
storage
get
for sure.
questions about, we don't have a big back room or it's door to floor. What we get in, we have to put out. So thinking about ways that you can sneak in a little extra storage there.
Always.
And then on the shelves, this is one of our simplest piece of advice, but in my background, I worked at IKEA for many years, and I just remember seeing people floating so much merchandise daily, and you didn't really have the chance to go back to it. So this, I think, was a catchphrase from them, but it's been ingrained in my mind, and it's so true. It's just about being clean, priced, and full. The store and how the merchandise is on the shelf, how it's put away, that is the merchandising, because chances are you will not be able to revisit it, or you get pulled away, or it just starts to sell. So how are you are you front facing everything? And we love the image on the right because it just reminds us that it's okay to have a little bit of air around the product. Not every time does it have to be jam-packed. It has to be shoppable. And it's okay to just give that eye a little bit of visual rest.
Yeah, and I love the little bit of propping, because sometimes we get over propping and then people want to buy your props, and that's where we've gone too wrong. But I love this little bag that's been branded with some greenery inside. That's such a simple thing. And then just like the levels that are creating by, not just doing one level of product, they can create a little bit of height and visual.
And it matches the brand.
And it definitely matches the brand. So we usually categorize two different approaches to merchandising, and one is lifestyle. So lifestyle is mainly approach to merchandising that tells a story, that carries out a theme or an end use that you're kind of promoting. What I mean by that is it like vacation time and you have to pack for a vacation? What do you need? So this encourages add-on selling, and it creates a little bit more of an interest in the surroundings.
It's like a story.
Yeah, a story. So again, these are examples of lifestyle merchandising within a space. So one on the left, I think this is Indigo.
Yeah.
And they are
phenomenal.
At their merchandising choices and talking about end use and sort of telling a story. So this is the outdoor lounging area. And so they have all the products that you would need to sort of spruce up this area of your home. So they're telling a story, and you can see behind there are also elements in the wall fixture that can coordinate with what's in this front display in front of that. So notice that they have the pillars, oh my gosh, I can't talk about what are these things?
Pillows.
Bolsters. Bolsters have like the
pillows.
Yeah, we have some greenery, we have some plants, we have some planters. So all of these things are perfect, add-on sales. It's like, I want the whole thing. It's like when you see a mannequin, you want to buy the whole outfit. It should be merchandised right.
And what I love too is this is another great point, is they do a great job of what is online or in their campaign is in your store. We actually did a test once in one of our merchandising classes to kind of find ads online, then go into the actual brick and mortar store and see if you can find it. And are you kind of matching that expectation? And that's so true, because we've all been there. We get that flyer, the old-fashioned flyer in the mail, and we go into the store and we can't find the item. The sales associates are busy. So what is that impression and where are these key stories? And of course you can make people search, but you want to match their impression. And then opposite to lifestyle is commodity. Can be a loss leader or door crasher, just making a statement. But the big thing with commodity, and it obviously makes sense when you see it visually, is you're going kind of big with one item. So it's volume. So we love the example from Whole Foods on the left with their watermelon, probably expiring soon. They know they need to get rid of them. So they've made it a fun kind of interactive display. There's usually samples at Whole Foods, so that's always engaging as well. But just, repeating in this large volume. And again, you can dictate this to the customer. It might be something that you overbought and it has been a bit of a bad seller. They don't know that.
You just say, we love it.
We
We're in
love it,
business
and
with
we
it.
have lots, and here's a deal, or here it's so popular. But it's a way to sales steer.
And we mentioned earlier with facades, thinking about color, it's a great way to grab interest. Well, color always wins when it comes to merchandising. It's the first thing that people usually look for when they shop. They say like 80 to 90%. I'm not sure the exact statistic, but it's how we shop. We always look for our favorite colors and what that means. So color is something that we need to sort of consider always when merchandising, and it's really easy on the eye and it can be predictable, and of course it has emotional meanings and suggestions on that end. So we love these bright color pops, and some are like on the left you have a primary color story. It relates to the brand's labeling, and it's really bright and powerful. Imagine seeing this in an LCBO. It's going to stand out from everything else. And it speaks to the brand repeatedly. You can see that the shark logo icon, all the elements are there, but the color is really popping off, but the product is still the star of the show. I love this banana boat pop shop, I think this was, and it's, they bring the actual merchandising of the bananas, but they're actually selling their products. As you can see, they're repeating that color throughout and using those simple crates. The contrast in the crates. So the contrast between the plywood that they used as a simple surface in the background and using that neon sort of green color to kind of create that visual interest. And I love this Old de Janeiro product pop up here with the high contrast and the yellow and the pink, and just the amount of wow factor that would have.
And taking a cue from the actual product.
Exactly.
Is kind of not rocket science. It's right there, right? And you can just go bigger. Adding height, another kind of merchandising 101, different levels. And I guess it's best to kind of show the visuals here. So again, you're putting that product out. You maybe say, well, I'll come back to it, but some retailers do a great job of this. You can probably think of HomeSense Winners. They create those amazing tables with layers. The trouble here is to just make sure you don't make it too layered and built up that
you can't access it.
And you're afraid there'll be an avalanche, or you're walking by and you think, I just want that one thing and I can't get to it. But the one on the left is that simple pyramid. So creating levels, adding interest. And then the one on the right is that zigzag. So using the floor, oftentimes people kind of forget
about that.
Adding crates or sneaking in another nesting table. Adding tables or stools to the tops of tables to create more interest, sometimes kind of bringing the ceiling down as well. Here there's some greenery, but just taking it a step further. Once you know your theme, how can you add that interest?
Yeah, the one thing that doesn't really work really well, unless you're a very, very high-end retailer or brand, is keeping everything flat. You can't see it from a distance, right? So if you're creating those heights, you can see that from several points of the store, and even in the window display, that's really key as well.
Optimal buying height, it's another favorite one because yes, everybody is a different height. They say around 4 feet. 5 inches, around that, between 4 and 5 feet is that band that you're looking for. And the best way to remind yourself of this is when you go to a drugstore and you're looking at, the toothpaste. Is Crest or Colgate at eye level? Probably. Fighting for that shelf space. And then really what is above it and what is below.
So just really utilizing wall space is massive. It's one of your biggest sellers as opposed to the floor fixtures. This is where you have a lot of height. And a lot of people tend to look at it as like the shoppable areas, what was Karen was saying, in that gold zone, and then you have your sort of silver and bronze zones where you have the lower level that you have to bend down to get, and the higher level that you can't reach. But it doesn't mean you can't use that space. And I think that higher level, as you can see on the image on the left, it's more
perfect
display.
photo for
Yeah,
that.
it's exactly. This is more of like brand storytelling. It's got these cool canisters. It's got this repetitious vibe going on. It's still telling a really great story. They have some wayfinding signage in the middle, and below they have storage, whereas the image on the right is more of a fixture like you see at Walmart or Canadian Tire, where they have the big elements on the bottom that are heavy and sort of the key best-selling elements in the center and more displayed towards the top. So again, you're kind of creating these levels of use, but the main areas in the middle is the key area for selling.
Containing it. This is also another favorite one. Just using, many people do this and they try, but one of our kind of key points when we're giving consultations is to be consistent with what you're adding in. So smaller items, especially whether it's foods or accessories, very popular kind of in women's fashion to have all these add-on accessories. How are you containing all these little pieces? So bins, trays, so many possibilities. We've used cake stands before.
Stands, yeah, everything, jewelry, displayers not for jewelry. There's lots of opportunities for, again, containing things to keep them sort of shoppable, but visually still exciting. And we like to sort of do a bit of mixing, but sometimes mixing can be a little convoluted. So, you know, on the one on the left, it's the same bin used over and over again with the wood crate, which is always, we love a good wood crate if it's more of a rustic vibe. The one in the center, they're kind of utilizing some wire basket as an option. So again, kind of staying consistent.
See the product.
You can still see the product through it, but it still has some containing and it's still shoppable. And we love a good tray. You know, either make your own trays. We've even lined trays with cheap and cheerful wrapping paper with seasonality to create pattern so that your product can pop off of it. So again, just gives it a space in home and in a place where, gosh, we know when somebody takes something off the table and puts it back somewhere else, this almost tells the customer, please put it back.
It's like keys at home.
Yes,
Put
exactly.
them in the key
It
vault.
has its space.
It has a home.
Yeah, it has a home.
Especially good for testers too and samples that they're all contained
and labeled. Yes.
Yes, you love repetition.
Repetition. So we love repetition, right? So but over repetition can kind of get us bored as well. But it's much like color. It's easy for the eye to recognize, and it sort of reinforces an object. So when we see it over and over again, we're like, oh, that's great. It's sort of making an impact. Think of repetition as using it as creating a highlight on something, a product or a color or whatever it might be.
When you always compare it to a song.
Yeah. So
rhythm, right?
Yeah. So when we listen to music, when we're vibing it, you know, there's got a rhythm and a repetition to it. And then there's a little bit of a, you know, bridge or something that kind of is an anomaly that kind of breaks you out of the rhythm, but you can bring them back in. And these are examples of repetition through display or merchandising. So you have repetition of color, you have repetition of light heights and levels or shapes or forms. I love the ice cream. This is ice cream. The one in the middle was the ice cream. Ooh. Presentation.
I forget the brand.
Yeah. Anyway, so
you can find it.
Yeah, I think it was. It doesn't matter, but you can see that they're repeating the stripes on the ceiling. They're repeating the signs with really
and the color of their packaging, like embracing it,
and the patterns repeated in the different colors. So it's just really fun and playful, and of course, just repeating, you know, vessels on the right hand side. So it's just repetition is always great. With a little variance is even better.
And then lighting is always another, well, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
People,
and expensive.
Yes, expensive. They get scared of the budget and then they get, it's a fear of the unknown. So again, call in those professionals, but lighting, again, you can never go wrong, especially on the facade, because when you drive down a downtown core at night,
you might be closed, but your brand isn't.
Yeah, so it's a great test just to go and look at the different light levels and different techniques. Color of light is fun to play with as well, but just looking not only in the store, so the top level there is showing kind of little nooks and LED strip lighting, or do you just have a little moment at your cash? Probably you're already doing this, but then outside again, that first impression and cool little installations. The higher brands again are doing this, but it's, you know, it's all about kind of getting that phone out, taking a photo or snapping a pic of the store. But we just love the tone that this sets. And again, it's that first impression, but you're going now day to night.
Yeah, and I also think layering of light sources is really important. You have your overall ambient light, like if you see in the top left corner with the sunglass store, they have several moments of lighting. So they have the overall ambient light of the store, could be natural lighting. They have track lighting that's going to accent the fixtures on the wall, but also the shelves on the wall have strip lighting within them. So not every shelf below gets darker and darker and darker. So it's got layers of light which create texture and depth within your space. So if it's always just one flat light, it's not going to have the same effect.
And then I guess maintenance, that's the number one thing with lighting, doing that walk, making sure the bulbs are changed. Do you have enough? And are the pools of light shining on the products? Because we get moving things. And then again, in our walkthroughs, it's so easy to do. And the last thing you want to do when you've done an overnight store flip is get out the ladder and climb up and redirect lighting. But it's again, allowing yourself to have that time.
Yeah, I always have students, we do window installations here at the school and they're almost done. It's like the end of the day and they're like so excited. And I'm like, did you light? And they're like, but then they light it and it's almost like this moment. It's like literally the whole window comes to life and they're like, oh my God, that makes such a big difference. And I can't stress that enough. It's one of the most underused tools in the toolkit of a merchandiser, which is lighting.
It's so important.
Yeah.
We touched on this earlier, props. Another common question is how do I know what to prop and when have I hit kind of the limit of too much propping? And again, it goes back to Halloween. Like if you do the gourds or the pumpkins, maybe you don't need the witches and the brooms and the glitter and the sparkles and the moon and the black cats. And it's
all the
too
things.
much. So,
all the things.
But again, sometimes that complements your brand and you have a big story and install. But we love these images here as reminders that a prop can just be a hint of something to enhance the story or complement your merchandise.
My personal favorite, which is just so simple, is I'm a fashion stylist, so I love fashion stores, and I love the simple balloon blowing up like it's a bubble gum and attaching it to the mannequin. Like it's a 10-cent prop that is so fun and playful that you could repeat and you're going to stop people in the streets. And again, props don't have to be customized and expensive. You just got to get a little creative with the application. So I love that simple note. I also love just a bit of, if you go to an expert, I love those popsicles and bright colors. They could be used as an Instagrammable moment in your store, in the window display. Lots of opportunities just to talk about spring and maybe again, that neon color story.
And I love the florals. I know it kind of blocks the overview, but I just
gotta have
it. I love the over the top florals. And then we've been seeing a lot of cardboard or foam. What are those panels? Like felt
panels,
props, but just fun, and you could reuse them, and then they could kind of be in your window, but the theme would be throughout your whole store.
And that's one thing is like, if you're going to prop something in store and have a theme or in the window, you want to almost try to repeat that little moments, again, repetition throughout the store as well.
So cute.
Yeah, we love like if you're doing some greenery in the window, then continue some greenery within your store. So that continues that message. And again, kind of going back to Diane's obsession with signage and messaging, sometimes the sign is really important to stick with, key things like consistent typography, hierarchy of text. So what do you need to say first, second, and third, and really highlight that in the scale and the placement of your text. Are you a center aligned brand or are you a left aligned brand with where you place your text? And then also the holders that you're using. We constantly see those plexiglass that you get on Amazon and slide in a sign for that. But we also like these options here where there's pretty inexpensive, found even small pieces of wood with little slits in them you can put in the signage. It's really quite simple.
And they're durable.
And they're really durable. And if they go walking, you can, you have another one there and they don't scratch, right? So we love these examples of even the bullnose clip to go onto it to attach it. So simple. It doesn't have, it's an opportunity to rebrand as well, like you see the one on the right. And they don't always have to say sale. They don't have to say a price. They can tell a story. They can highlight a new product. They can highlight qualities of the product as well.
Yeah, like features and benefits. And again, we just make this little slide to remember the different levels and what information is kind of key when the customer meets your range. So again, the fourth level is that directional signage. It's the overview we think of when you go into a Walmart, maybe you're at a different location right away. You think, okay, I need food, I need the pharmacy, I need women's clothing, and that orients you right away by those signs or what you're seeing billboarded. Third level is just some more key insights, maybe something else to kind of pull you in. But the second level and that first level is really where, if we can't find a customer service associate, this is where we make our buying decision. And this is where we need that detailed information. So who made it? What are the ingredients? Maybe like warranties, return policy, care instructions, and of course the price.
And again, as we were saying, sometimes you want to highlight those product features and benefits. So you might be the only one that carries this particular product, and maybe the packaging doesn't really speak to it, or you want to speak to it, but you're not with every customer. So how can we show the product in use and really use images or again words and types of signage or other creative branding signage that kind of highlights that. So we love, something, if it's handmade, highlight that. We always, we talk about now being locally grown or made and really highlighting that, or how you can care for the product. What are the actual ingredients? Because that is becoming more and more important for a lot of people. Like, what am I putting on my body or in my body? And this can be done in so many ways through hang tags or stamps or handwritten notes. Like there's like that template on the bottom left. I love that it can be customized for each product, and it has a simple template that you can reuse over and over.
We've re-merchandised stores with some really great brands who've really taken that time to steam their garments and retag everything, and it's just that special touch. And billboarding, much like repetition, we're no stranger to this. We just kind of mentioned it. It helps you to orient yourself, but it also makes an impact. So the billboarding is, again, that repetition. You can also do it with lifestyle. So on the left is an example. It's just kind of creating that moment and an impact. So especially if you have an overflow product or you're known for something, you can think of a wall is not your hottest spot, but a place where you can drive traffic to a colder area to kind of create this impact. And they just are so strong, especially when you see the Uniqlo t-shirt wall.
Massive wall.
It's pretty crazy to think of how far you can take this, but at the same time, it really works on a smaller scale.
And I love that cafe where they're the customized cups by customers, and so it creates a little sense of community. So you don't always have to sell the product. It could be a brand.
You go pick your cup and then fill it up.
And
don't forget. That doesn't sound very nice. Don't forget.
Don't forget. Always consider that you are the expert or your staff are the expert. And really, this is one of the biggest areas that we get a lot of questions about when we do seminars or webinars, is like my staffing. And it's sort of like, you want them to be invested. And so this is one of the examples where we can kind of think about our employees as our brand ambassadors. So they're the best ones to sort of speak to your story. And so how can you get them committed to do that? We talk about doing parties or reward systems, or again, giving them the courage to tackle that wall display or that window display and sort of letting them own it, because that's where they become invested, and then they'll stay if they're invested and they believe in the brand. So it's a lot about face-to-face interaction, and it really provides some direct feedback to you if you're working with your staff and employees, or working with your customers or your guests, to really understand what is that they're drawn to, what they like, what they don't like, what they're looking for, and using that information.
And that's kind of the biggest piece, because you've got them hooked, you've got them into your store by your beautiful facade, you now have gorgeous windows, you have your product assortment, but then how do you get them coming back, and how do you make that memorable? And this is often a missing piece. We find brands either do this really well and they've had people who are there for years and they're part of the brand, or it's just kind of like seasonal hires and it's flipping. But we always love to, if you can, give some products to your employees, say, here's 5 new finds. What would you do with these? Would you do like an Instagram reel, or if it's food, give us your review. And then that, like you said, gives them ownership, and they're invested, we always say staff picks as
Yeah,
well.
we love a staff picks fixtures feature. So having a space in your store where there could be near the cash or sort of maybe a dead zone in your store where you're not sure what to do with it. And we always love a staff pick suggestion because again, it gives ownership to the staff, it gives them a little pride, and it sort of gives a little backing or testimonial to some of the products to your customers as well.
And also your customers, when they come in, if they're really happy getting that firsthand, especially on Instagram, a little quote or their feedback or them wearing a product.
Like user generated content.
Again, interactive, let people explore your store, get up close and personal. Instagrammable moments. A lot of downtowns have these. I think in Godrich, there's like this beautiful kind of, it's like wings and this mural. A lot of towns have gorgeous murals and little spots to go, but the bigger brands have been creating installations. So together as a community, having these happen, and oversized props like the one that Glossier did on the right are just, they're big budget, but they're whimsical and fun. And
yeah, but it can happen within your space. But if you want to do that sales floor, that exterior option is always great too. And again, a little bit of pink can go a long way as a really fun pop of color. The other thing that's really trendy, so interactive is definitely something where a lot of the retailers that are surviving is jumping into that. So anytime you can get the customer to interact with you and your product and your brand. The other thing is customization. So customers are now looking to have an experience where they get to sort of create your own one-of-a-kind product or customization of a product that they love that you might have. So these are just some examples on the left. I'll let Karen talk about that kind of story of customization there.
Yeah, and this is at Coach. They have a campaign, it's still running. They call it pre-love. So taking your older pieces and adding to them or purchasing a new piece and then making it your own. So through tags or color, and very community centric as well. So New York would be different than Shanghai versus Chicago. But from everything from, I mean, Nike, the sportswear industry and running shoes, this was kind of where it started, probably like with the biggest impact, customization with the running shoes. And now we're seeing it a lot in beauty.
Yeah, I love this Maison. Again, a very big brand, but they did this really cool pop-up with their scent. So you get to choose what scent you want. You could create your own personalized label. Now with those little mini printers, it's not that hard to do with, or even Polaroid cameras. And then you take that Polaroid and put it into the bag that you're walking home with. So again, it's just a little personalized moment.
Very tactile.
Yeah, and then that's going to be saved and replicated over user-generated content through social. So again, they have the hashtag there so that it instructs the customer to, again, create that content for you. You don't have to do all the work all the time.
Yes. Test, try, and buy. This was, we always love the story about, remember when Apple first took their product out of their packages and everyone was like in shock because they were obviously so expensive and, you know, they're going to get touched and people will use them and what's happening.
Yeah.
But when you think of their stores, it's so one of everything kind of to test and try, but it gets you up close and personal. You can feel the weight of the phone or, you know, bang on those keys on the laptop, but you're appealing to the sense. And the beauty industry is a leader. Automatically, we all think of Sephora. I love that picture on the top left. That is my daughter's. Every sample, every scent, it's just overload, but it's like a playground for being allowed to touch the product. So it's just that shift, whether it's food or little takeaways at an event or makeup or clothing, just allowing people to, you know, have some things out of a package, letting them explore.
And there's a reason that customization is just so trendy is because, again, you can make it your own little memory. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think one of the areas that I see that's really big is those customized charm bracelets or necklaces where you can go around with a little basket like you see on the left and just kind of collect your little pieces. And then you get carried away and you buy more than what you wanted in the first place. But it's so exciting to be able to make your own thing. So I think that's kind of something to consider how you can implement that into your space.
Yeah, making it your own.
Yeah.
Materials and inspiration, our favorite. It's not us painting, is it?
No. But I mean, that could be.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me, and we just kind of selected our own pages because we have different approaches to things and what we like within display, and it's usually very different. But This is sort of my picks. I love, something presented en masse. So that second one from the, excuse me, with the like all of these little woven baskets or bins and repeated and suspended by a simple wooden dowel. I know that's a lot of baskets and would take a lot of money, but there's something that maybe you have a collection that you can or you thrift them, and you can create an en masse sort of cool presentation, and then it just creates this really visual exciting moment.
I knew you would love that one on the bottom left. I saw that one day, and
yeah, I love just taking a couple of carpets and just having this cool ribbon movement effect. It's so textural and really interesting. It would take some time for suspension, but I love that as well. Again, I'm focusing more on fashion because that's kind of my area of expertise.
Your tones.
Yeah, my tones are always usually the warm tones. I love me a simple prop like the grass in the top right, second from the right. I love that it's got metallic on the bottom, kind of modernize it. It's a little bit of spray paint, a little bit of paper and cardboard to create, again, different heights and scale and texture. And it's just repeating the same prop at different levels. I love that. It's so simple.
Okay, mine. Oh, yes. This is my favorite. So One Hotel, top left, just at all of their locations.
So good.
So simple. It's usually just greenery. I've seen it in the winter with greens. I've seen it in the spring, and then they add these little hints of like tulips or daffodils, but it's just, I want this to be on my front porch.
Just over abundance.
Fabulous. All the different containers, and it's not too matchy, but it just gives this nice green image, and I love it. I think it could apply to almost any brand. Just simple, again, what we were talking with the props on the next photo there in the center. I just love that you could install that for a season and basically interject little other bits of color or change out your mannequins or change the style or the position of them. But again, you're thinking of kind of the work behind the scenes. So making something amazing but easy to install. And then just the exterior, again, going for it with those dark dramatic colors. We've spec'd some different signage before where when it works with your logo, I love that little hint of brass or gold if it applies. And then the display stands, very simple. Maybe you have wooden ones already, but now you mix it up and add a few other brand colors. And I just love the flexibility of them. How many times do we say
all the time
to people, can you make these for us? Because we need them.
Yeah, if
cover them
2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, and they're all 12 inches or 24 inches wide, and then you can turn them, flip them on their sides if you finish all sides and the bottoms. There's so many opportunities. Wrap them in a graphic, paint them different colors, decoupage them if you want to. There's so many options. We've even seen a store create a tray in the top of it and put sand, so they put sunglasses in it. Just really cool little touches.
So flexible.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to our end. I think we powered through everything there. So again, thank you for being in the audience. We hope you have some questions. We have a downloadable worksheet that is just kind of like highlighting the display aspect of the windows. So just a little checklist if you want to empower another coworker to do this or you use it. And then of course, if you do have any other little questions, we have like a fillable form on our website as well as Instagram where we try and share our
tips and tricks
or inspirational moments.